Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call the open meeting for the Richmond City Council on Monday, February 27, 2023 to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Any errors or omissions? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Mr. Clerk, any agenda additions or deletions?
Thank you, Your Worship. For a correction for item number 12, 2023 Liquid Waste Management Plan Biennial Report, on page CNCL 188, staff have provided an updated statistics on emissions.
All right, may I have a motion on the agenda with that change? So moved. All those in favor, opposed, carried. All right, may I have a motion to resolve in the committee of the whole to hear delegations on agenda items? So moved. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Is there anyone here tonight who wishes to delegate on an item on the agenda? Not you staff guys. Anyone else?
Move it, rise and report.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Brings us to the consent agenda. Receipt of committee minutes, the award of the contract for the Workforce Management Solutions and Services. We have a land use application for first reading, which goes to public hearing March 20th, which is an application for a temporary commercial use permit, 8991 Charles Street. There's a housing agreement to secure 156 affordable housing units, and a housing agreement, to secure 120 market rental units, and an agreement to secure 17 market rental housing units in phase 1 and 2 of the proposed development located 8671, 8731, 71, 8831, and 51 Canby Road, 8791 Canby Road, and 3600 Sexsmith Road, and 3480, 3500, 3520, 40, and 60 Sexsmith Road. Then we have the 2022 annual reports and the 2023 work plans for the Richmond Intercultural Advisory Committee and the Food Security and Agricultural Advisory Committee. The 2023 Liquid Waste Management Plan biennial report, and finally the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for the 2022 and 23 Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Grant applications. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? So that's moved and seconded. I'll ask for any speakers. All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. So I'll be supporting everything on the consent agenda. Number 8 is the application for Charles Street. This is actually a really good deal. We've got a car rental company that's going to rent that space from us and make use of it until we can find a use for it. And we did ask in planning committee if staff had or any ideas of something we might be using that lot at 8991 Charles for, but so far there aren't. So this is a great way to make use of the property. Number 9 is the market rental affordable housing agreement. This is for the Talisman project, and while I do not agree with the Talisman project, I don't think there's near enough affordable housing, I do agree with having the housing agreement, so I will be supporting this even though I did not support the Talisman project. Then that's actually all I wanted to talk about. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Au.
Yes, Your Worship, I have questions on item number 10, the Richmond Intercultural Advisory Committee annual report and work plan. First of all, I would like to thank the committee for the contribution into helping us to build a more harmonious society. Now, I want to ask questions on the newcomers video series. Of course, and I think they have lots of the committee has lots of inputs into the videos, the content, and also the presentation. Have we received any feedback from the public so far?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, yes, we have received feedback from the public, positive feedback, especially in regard to the language translations to the newcomers video series.
Yes, very good. I think they are very good, and I hope that more people will watch the videos. And my second question is about the annual diversity symposium. Do we have a theme already?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, we do not have a theme established yet. The steering committee to the symposium will be meeting next week, and that's where we will be deciding on a theme.
Okay, very good. So we will keep posted. Thank you very much. And also another question for item 13, the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. Okay, so this is application for new projects. So we are trying to get fundings for projects that has not been funded by the city. Am I right?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, correct.
Okay, so in case we do not, if we are not successful in getting the funds, so will we come back to the city for the the normal channel for funding?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, we would look at those in future capital programs.
Okay, so why are these three projects being picked?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, these are things that can be done, which will help us with our flood protection program. These provide good information and also an opportunity to do some upgrades.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, I will be in support of all the items on the consent agenda tonight. Just briefly going to highlight a couple that haven't been spoken about yet. One is the item number 7, the award of contract to Kronos Canadian Systems, one that I've heard good things about. Not that many options or people applying to get this contract, but regardless, staff are confident, and so am I. The other item I'd like to speak to is number 10 and 11 kind of together, the two advisory committees that have a big year ahead. When it comes to Intercultural Advisory Committee and our recent endorsement of the protocol and some definitions, and perhaps a new version or an updated protocol might come from this year as well. And also lots of ongoing work when it comes to agricultural projects throughout the city. We did recently hire a second soil bylaw officer position, so hopefully more work can go to and from the advisory committee with the work plan that's set out. I really appreciated responses at Public Works and Transportation in regards to liquid waste management. I found that an interesting report, lots of interesting sections, and I appreciate the corrections that were just shared with us today. Also, I just wanted to highlight some of the great work that is in that report, such as some of the stormwater management success stories we've had around Mitchell Island and elsewhere, the 100% water metering on single-family homes, and also quite a high percentage now for multifamily, and other ways of finding success to make our liquid waste less wasteful. And lastly, just the recently discussed item there, the 3 projects, and I'm really pleased that staff are able to find 3 priority items and be able to apply to the maximum amount, which I'm confident we'll be successful with. And with that, I'm in support of all those items. Thank you.
Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting everything on the consent agenda as well. I just want to highlight, make a comment about the housing agreement at Talisman Project. It's such a large tract of land that we rezoned for housing, and there's thousands of units going to be built there. Of this market rental housing agreement, 0% of the units being built are 3-bedroom units. So that's just really unfortunate that they're not going to be family-friendly units, but that was the best that we could get out of them at the time. But I know that we're doing better now, and hopefully we'll do better going forward and have more rental, more than, this, and bigger units of rental. But we need to get these built, so it's good that it's in progress.
All right, thank you. With that, we're going to call the question on the motion for the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That is carried. Brings us to the one item that is not on the consent agenda, which is from Public Works and Transportation Committee. We'll turn it over to Councillor Carol Day, Chair. If you could press your button. Press your button. There you go. Okay, there you go.
Perfect, yeah,
You're
so
on.
this is the, item number 14 from Public Works and Transportation Committee, is the Traffic and Parking Management Plans Construction Parking Review. And option 4 was selected as described in the report, which has basically a pilot project where we would try to find a way to mitigate construction in an established residential area when it is very disruptive to the people who live there. And so we're trying to find a balance. So it's a pilot project.
All right, so do you want to move it?
Oh, I'll move it, yes, thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be voting against this. It wasn't recommended by staff, and the pilot that is being contemplated is to require everybody in the neighborhood to have a parking pass for their neighborhood. So if you have visitors coming to visit you, it's going to create a problem where they don't have access to that pass. They're going to have to then park in your driveway, and then you're going to have to move your cars around if you're going to have guests. And we don't really have a problem in most neighborhoods. The one neighborhood that's come up a few times to all of us has been the Spires neighborhood, and the possibility to just do a referral to create a specific program for that neighborhood or a specific pilot for that neighborhood came up, but that wasn't what we're voting on here. What we're voting on here is to do just a pilot of a general construction plan, and in most neighborhoods, we're not having major construction issues. Just this particular neighborhood has been one, and that is why there is more sensitivity around it. But I don't see that we have a problem that we're trying to fix. I think we have specific neighborhoods that need some focused attention on them.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be speaking in support of the recommended option number 4. I also would highlight that there are other areas outside of Spires where I have heard and experienced parking issues. One is out in Hamilton, where it's a very big active construction zone. And there was a number of roads around kind of Westminster Highway and Gilly where construction workers, even with marked vehicles, were parking for lengths of time in front of businesses where there was only very few spots available for people who were trying to frequent the new hair, pizza, and other businesses. So it made it quite a concern. In that region, and also years back around, and still along Audlin Road, Alexandra in the West Cambie area. I remember many residents, myself at a time, dealt with workers parking on sidewalks, and that's in a school zone. Some workers not having access to a washroom and going into people's front of their yards and relieving themselves there. So I think there's lots of other problems that spiral when we start to have parking issues. So I think this is a great way that staff can generate another successful pilot program, and we'll do something rather than nothing. Thank you.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. In committee, we had a long discussion on this particular one, and yes, we did agree to option 4, but in agreement with Councillor Liu of the pilot project, the temporary resident permit pilot parking that we could do, I'm going to propose an amendment with regard to that, and that the pilot be done in the Spires Road area.
Okay, can I come back to you on that? Let's get more comments and then come back to you. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'll be supporting this. I think depending on who fielded the most complaints will be dependent on your point of view. The reason I see this here, Your Worship, is resident empathy and livability and quality of life. And I'm not going to get into the Spires Road thing, but it was a disaster for 18 months. And it's improved a little bit. We've got some fences up there now and on it. So I'm not going to get into the debate on that, but I want it from a positive point of view. Can we And I don't care where the pilot project goes, because I've got the same down in my area right now, trucks going through, knocking my cable down, knocking my hydro down, because those things go up and they don't look at it, but I didn't phone to us. Can we devise a sign that the city issues a developer that has a phone number if I have complaints about any issue if I have any issue with regard to that particular project, whether it be construction, hours of work on Saturday and Sunday, because if you think developers don't work Saturday, Sunday, you're kidding yourself. And that be given by the city. The hours of work are usually put on by the developer, and they're about this high. We need a sign. If you have a complaint, 276, whatever our number is at the work yard or the bylaw offices or whatever, and there will be somebody there to have my complaint, and that is issued.
Can we ask staff to comment on that, please? Because I thought there was already a phone number on the sign outside construction sites.
It is the developer sign, yeah.
Your Worship, perhaps I can deal with that one. Yes, at time of building, there is a sign that goes up. It's not quite as extensive as what is being suggested by Councillor McNulty in that it doesn't specify the actual hours of construction. But there is a sign, and there are contacts both for the applicant and also for the city.
So I would move after, or give direction to staff to create such, and all I want is the phone number there where they can get an answer to their complaint.
With respect, we're talking about parking.
With regard to parking as well, they're in my driveway, who do I phone?
Isn't that on the sign? Joe, Mr. Ursig?
So I got to go down the road. No, they're in my driveway, and they're 200 meters away because they parked in my driveway on my boulevard.
Your Worship, the sign isn't explicit about phone this number for parking problems, but there is a general city contact. In the first instance, there is a contact for the developer, but there is also a city contact on the sign.
So my comment, Mr. Mayor, is that we have a city contact. You cannot get a response from a developer, okay? And I hope council will have some residential empathy for people's quality of life.
Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was on the meeting on YouTube. I forgot my iPad that day, so I didn't actually technically log into the meeting properly. But I did pay attention to all the discussion. I think that option 4 is a good idea, simply because we've heard this coming up for a few things. We've got that rental project coming up in the Azure Road area where, you know, we have anticipated that parking might end up being a problem when we could do permit parking there. There have been areas all over the west side where, like in the single-family neighborhoods, where it's mansion boom for the last 10 years straight, where lots of residents have complained about vehicles parking and not having proper communication with the people doing the construction as well. And so as we move forward, and we're going to be, you know, doing more developments and potentially moving into these kind of residential neighborhoods more and more, I think doing a pilot project now, Burkeville's another one, Sea Island, where they're going to be looking, you know, discussing possibly doing permit parking if there's any more density that happens there, because there's nowhere else to go as far as parking. So I'm in support of that. I'm also in support if there is an amendment to have it be in Spires Road, because this is where the urgency is. Could be an area where we do a test pilot.
All right, Councillor Howe.
Yes, Your Worship. Staff has not made a recommendation in their report, but obviously the first option, which is the status quo, is not acceptable, because I think we received so many complaints from the public that there's a problem, and I think the problem is going to get worse. And yes, staff also mentioned that the problem is with bylaw enforcement, and I understand that. However, I think option 4 is not contradictory to enforcement. And actually, it will give the bylaw officers a better tool or an additional tool to enforce those bylaws. And hopefully, the pilot will suggest some ways that we can prevent the problems from getting worse. I have a question about the pilot project. Now, my understanding is that we haven't identified a location for this pilot. And my question is, will staff come back to us for a location with a few suggestions by staff?
Well, there is going to be a motion to amend to direct it be Spires, but just deal with it generally.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Au. We have not been specific about where we might do a pilot, and so we're absolutely open to Council's direction and can provide options if Council would like us to.
Okay, good, thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. Well, at committee, I initially agreed with what I thought the report was saying about the status quo and being able to deal with some of the issues effectively. But there have been a lot of parking challenges. Spires is one area, but I mean, even when you're having one house built by you, you can have issues too. So the bigger the project, the bigger the area, probably the bigger the challenges. So with option 4, I tend to agree with some of the comments already made by Councillor Liu as well. But I guess I'll see what the amendment is and go from there. But perhaps it is worth looking at a pilot project of some kind to see if it's more effective than the status quo in dealing with people's problems. And residential empathy is a good term by Councillor McNulty. So I'll see what the recommendation is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day, you've already spoken.
I had a question of staff, but I can do it later.
Okay, do it later then. From my point of view, I'll support option 4, and I'd like to hear a little more about Spires, but I think that's probably a good location. But my comment is that if you go into Vancouver, there's hardly anywhere in the whole city to park, unless you're a resident of a particular block. I don't want this to be the thin edge of the wedge so that we end up with, resident-only parking throughout the city. I think that we are addressing a specific context for this pilot, and I think that's, I think it's justified, but I don't want to expand it. So with that, Councillor Heed, if you could put back on your button for your amendment.
The motion I'm putting forward, Mayor, is to amend option 4 and have the temporary resident permit parking pilot, and stressing temporary, as part of the motion.
Well, may I suggest we could simply do it by inserting on after transportation in the Spires Road area. So that option 4 is described in the staff report entitled so-and-so, dated such and such from the Director of Transportation in the Spires Road area be approved. Did that get you there?
Yes.
All right, so that's the amendment, and that's moved. Is it seconded?
Okay.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Did you want to speak more to it?
That's fine, Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Day, on the amendment.
Yes, on the amendment, I wanted to ask staff, is there a way that we can do the pilot project in more than one place? Councillor McNulty just said that the area is much better than it was, a year or two ago. So if Spires is maybe, why not if we need it there, but it might be logical to do the pilot in more than one area if Spires is under control and we need to test the pilot.
To Your Worship, to Councillor Day, staff is open to direction from Council on doing one or more pilots.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think we should be limited to just Spires because we know there's other areas that, there's an enormous amount of construction going on, and it may become obvious to staff, planning staff, and to transportation staff that we need to try it somewhere else as well. So I don't mind the amendment. I just don't know it shouldn't be limited to just one place.
It does beg the question as to whether if it's still a pilot project when you're applying it generally in more than one area. So anyway, Councillor Wolf, on the amendment.
Yes, in opposition to the amendment, but still in support of the recommendation. option 4. I too feel that having staff with their expertise look at the areas, seeing the stages of when the next developments are happening where, and when this pilot would start, to have them come back with their options for us to choose from, with probably here's some why this one might be better than the Spires Road one, and at this point I'm unable to make that call, so that's why I'd like to see more options.
Councillor Howe.
Yes, I also prefer that the staff would come back to us with a few options instead of, this is the only place that we choose for now, because I don't think we have enough information on the whole city. So I won't support this motion. I'd rather have staff come back to us with choices that we can make.
Let's go back to Councillor Heed. You've heard the comments about instead of directing it be Spires, ask staff to come back and give that direction. If you have any comments on that, please go ahead.
I certainly do, Mayor. In committee, we had a long discussion about complaints that are coming in regarding Spires Road. And I agree with you, Mayor, if we expand this through the entire city, it's not a pilot anymore. We've got a people that are complaining in an area that's undergoing redevelopment. It would be ideal to get the pilot off the ground and in there now instead of just sitting back and waiting and waiting and waiting. The inertia that's going to be created will not address the problem we have right now on Spires Road, and the fact that staff was able to go out and come out with a pilot that we could see if it works, if we need to amend it, if we need to fix it, or we don't need to have this anymore during construction periods in these particular areas. Everyone has identified several communities around Richmond that are going to undergo this redevelopment, and they're going to be similar problems. Let's get the pilot off the ground, let's get it running, let's see if it worked, and if we were able to deal with some of the complaints in the area.
Councillor Glanders on the amendment.
On the amendment, thank you, Your Worship. I understand, I hear what everybody is saying, but I do agree with Councillor Heed. For another reason why Spires is an ideal location for it is, even if it's better than it was a year ago, it is right in the city centre. So whatever development's going on, people that need to park, they're going to abuse that area. So, no, not necessarily, but you know what I mean. It's probably more subject to parking issues, as it were. So why not just pick that area to get started, like Councillor Heed said, so we don't start analyzing it and then coming back in a few months on potential spots. Let's just get it there. And they can report back if it's effective or not effective, and staff can report back if they, now that they've done it there, they could see it would be good in such and such area, X, Y, Z. So I say let's just get it done.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll be supporting the amendment for many of the reasons already spoken to, but it is a very concentrated area and still quite a large area, and we know that there is going to be a lot of construction activity happening there. So there are other areas, I agree, but it just does seem like out of all the areas, a concentrated, fairly large, active area under development, and it would be a good way to assess the pilot project. So thank you.
All right, so I'm going to call the question on the amendment. This is to make it just for Spires as a pilot. All those in favor? Okay, those opposed? That is carried with Councillors Au, Wolf, and Day opposed. So we're now back on the main motion, which has been amended to direct it to Spires. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. That brings us to public announcement. I'm sorry, Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, I'd like to refer to staff the propriety of developing a sign so that residents, if they have any concerns with any issue regarding a development, would have a phone number in very clear and large terms that they could call directly to the city.
Well, let's ask staff, is there a phone number on the sign, Mr. Ersick?
Your Worship, yes, there is.
All right, so is that motion seconded?
It's not visible.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Councillor Day.
Yeah, I'd like to take that to a little bit longer. So if, let's say, there's an area where there's 5 or 6 houses or townhouses being built, and yes, there is a sign on the development that's, got 500 trucks in front of it that
We
you can't
are
really
on
see.
the motion.
On this motion, I think that we should also make it so that if someone 4 houses down, 8 houses down is having all this construction parking in front of their house, that they get the option of putting that no parking sign in front of their own property.
We are talking about putting a phone number on a sign.
Yes.
That is the motion.
And the signs could be available to people who live in the area. Yes?
I just don't think we're talking about the same thing. So I'm going to call the question on this motion to put the, Councillor McNulty's motion to put the number on the sign. All those in favor? Sorry, Councillor Galanders.
Sorry, I had a question of staff. Are we so there's the sign that's up on the fence that says if there's any issues, contact such and such, and it's the builder. And I have had success.
No,
it's the builder.
Didn't you say it's the city?
It's the builder.
Your worship, my recollection is there's both.
It's both.
But what the sign doesn't do is go into specifics. So if you have a parking problem, contact BYLAWS. If you have a noise problem, it's a generic sign. If there was a desire, a referral could be made to review the details of the existing signage, and we could then assess whether a more comprehensive sort of sign
So that it would be easier for an owner to get in touch with someone instead of looking up whose bylaws and all
Yes.
that. Okay. All right, thank you.
Does anyone want to make a motion to refer this for more information on what is on the sign? Anyone? Okay, then I'm going to call the question on the idea of putting this phone number on a sign. All those in favor? Those opposed? I'm opposed because I think it's already there, along with Councillor Liu. I'm sorry?
No, just nothing.
Okay, that brings us to public announcements. First of all, from the closed meeting today, we have the Sister City Advisory Committee appointment of William Yang. We have Richmond Accessibility Advisory Committee appointments, Pamela Andrews, Melanie Arness, Damien Gorman, Sean Lyle, Tommy Leung, Rob Sleeth, Ann Bichard, Ella Huang, Sue Jones, and Dave McDonald. And the council liaison to that committee will be Councillor McNulty. And then an appointment to the Vancouver International Airport Environmental Advisory Committee as a representative from ACES, Cynthia Zhao. Then we have just a few announcements of a general nature. First of all, we have International Women's Day on March 8th. It's an opportunity to come together to support and celebrate the tremendous achievements of women around the world. The Women's Resource Center is hosting a celebration fundraiser on Saturday, March 4th at 2 o'clock. And if you want information on that, go to the richmondwomencenter.org website. Then I'm going to be making my annual address, reviewing 2022 and talking a little about what's coming up this year. That's going to be hosted by the Richmond Chamber of Commerce, and that will be to various members of the community on Thursday, March 2nd at 11:15. My address will look at how our city has emerged from the challenges of the past 2 years and initiatives underway to foster a safe and resilient environment for residents and businesses. This in-person event will also feature a fireside chat and a Q&A session. So if you are interested and you want to attend, go to the richmondchamber.ca/events website. Then there's an engagement opportunities. There's a number of them. They are now online over Let's Talk Richmond. Public input is requested on the community wayfinding strategy, the draft youth strategy, the community needs assessment. So if you want to participate in any of those or others, go to letstalkrichmond.ca. And finally, there's a recreation, sport, and volunteer job fair. The community associations and societies will hold a job fair. That's going to be on Friday, March 10th from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. in the Minaroo Center for Active Living. Anyone interested in volunteer, part-time, seasonal, or full-time opportunities at our community centers should attend. So if you want information on that, go to richmond.ca/association careers. With that, Mr. Clerk, bylaws for adoption.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are two bylaws for final adoption with no noted opposition.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, opposed, carried. And Development Permit Panel.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are two recommendations for council. Number one, that the minutes of the Development Permit Panel meeting held on February 15th, 2023, and the Chair's report for the Development Permit Panel meetings held on April 14th, 2021 be received for information. And number two, that the recommendations of the panel to authorize the issuance of development permit for the properties at 9700, 9720, and 9800 Williams Road be endorsed and the permit so issued.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We are now adjourned.